Oh, hey, gang. I You may be confused. I just sent out some links and started a stream, but I was trying to utilize YouTube's a different interface, streaming interface that they keep throwing me this warning that Google Hangouts that I use, which is the interface I use to run these shows, is going away later this year, and that I need to use this other thing instead. And it doesn't give me the option to screen share, or at least I couldn't figure out the option to screen share. So I came back to this. I'm excited today. Another solo show, by the way. Brad says he's feeling better. He should be back for Monday. We'll see. Today I get to ink one of my absolute favorite pages from Dead Shit the Comic Book. Issue 1, 2, or 3. Believe I've talked about this page on the show. I may have done the pencils for this page on our very first show, or maybe our second show. But I am at page 43 of 52. Almost done with my inks for Dead Shit the Comic Book issue number 3. And this in the writing of the script, I told you guys the other day that I sort of wrote a rough outline for the whole book, then went back and kind of refined issue 1, wrote it, drew it, refined issue 2, wrote it, drew it, and then refined issue 3 and wrote it and drew it. This page that I'm getting ready to ink today was part of that original first draft that I wrote, and was one of the funniest things that I put in the story, and it survived all the different iterations and all the different drafts. And this scene in issue 3 is one of the funniest scenes to me in the entire book, and it is it's this shot right here of this pair of aliens who almost run into Ahomana's giant head that now sticks out of the Earth's atmosphere. And when I wrote it, it cracked me up. It's this like non sequitur scene that just like comes out of nowhere and goes into the point of view of these aliens in space. This fucking like pervert alien that's trying to get frisky with his pilot, who's this big titty alien girl. He's trying to get all up in them titties, and they almost hit Ahomana's giant monster head. It's very funny to me. It's one of the funniest scenes in the whole book, and we're gonna ink that today on the shoe. Well, let me see what I can do with this chat. I think I could do anything with it. I think I can do a damn thing. This is the internal chat if someone else was here on the show with me. So in order to see the live chat, I'm still trying to get this all figured out, gang. Oh, okay. I'm gonna have a co-host. I am gonna have a co-host. Give me just a second. We're gonna do this live. This is gonna be fun. All right. Let me grab this. Right. 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 Give me just a second here, gang. We're getting a co-host live. All right. Getting a live co-host today. So give me just a second here, and I will get the chat going. You know how we do. Okay. Chat's up. Ready for you guys when you get here. On the struggle bus. Okay. All right. So I am going to switch over to Clip Studio mode and get started on this page while we wait for our guest co-host. And we're gonna have a fun show today. This is gonna be fun. It's gonna be lots of fun. Okay. Let me get this page out here. You guys believe we're already 43 pages into this fucking comic? I think I've inked every single page. That's not true because some of the pages I do about one page at a time here on this show. I was gonna say I've inked all the pages on the show, but that's not true. I do one here and like three others during a day. But you guys have seen this whole process. You guys have. We started this show when I was in the pencil phase, and now I'm about to finish up the inking phase and head into the lettering phase. And then we'll go to the color flatting phase, the color finishing phase. You guys will see the creation of this entire comic, an indie comic made from scratch, from blank pages to a finished comic. That's cool. That's super cool to me. I am just figuring out my balance of my page here. It's looking good. It's looking decent. I think I'm going to give it a little bit more breathing room. I think that'll do it. All right. Let's get this started. Where's my chat peoples? Where's my chat peoples? Get in here. Talk to me. Talk it up. Got shit to say. All right. So, about the midway through this book, I was telling you guys the other day, I got that feeling, that overwhelming feeling of like, my God, I've got so much work to do. Like, these pages are going to take forever. 52-page comic book. Oh man, what a daunting task. And this was right as I was starting the inking phase because I had just finished drawing the whole comic book in 11 by 17 pages in pencil. And I was just not feeling it at first. This inking phase was just beating me up. And the rest of that will be done in color. And I was really bumming for a while there. I've been working on the inks for about 2 weeks. And about a week in, it just all clicks. And the pen starts working the way you want it to work. Becomes an extension of your mind. And you just sort of relax and get to work. And That happened about a week ago, and I've just been humming through the pages, and suddenly I found myself very near the end here. This is it's a big deal. The most labor-intensive part of the process is the layouts, pencils, and inks. Once you got these phases behind you, um, things get a lot easier. The lettering ain't a big deal. The color flatting ain't a big deal. Color finishing is a little more intensive than the lettering and flatting, but it's still nothing compared to laying in these images. You know what I'm saying? This is gotta get them 5 nipples on that alien titty. Yes, sir. Right. Uh, so I'm real jazzed. I'm happy to be getting near those other phases of this comic. Have the real hard work behind me. And another thing about doing this third issue that's really been working in my favor here. Go back to the chat real quick. Come on, fellas, chat me up. Uh, Another thing that's really been working in my favor here, doing issue 3, is I don't have a due date. I felt tremendous pressure working on issue 2 because I decided to call an audible halfway through the Dead Shit issue 1 campaign and throw issue 2 up as a perk as part of issue 1. And I thought a couple people jump in here, and I'll do my best to get it to them on time. If I run over my promised time, it won't be that big of a deal. There won't be very many people ordering this perk anyway. And I'll be damned if almost everybody that came in on issue 1 re-upped and grabbed issue 2 as part of the campaign. And I was like, oh man, now I really have to get this done in the time that I promised. And that was a lot of pressure to get that second issue finished. And it was a nutbuster because I was finishing issue 2, running the campaign at the same time, and finishing the semester of my classes at the local community college, my art classes. And man, oh man, talk about busy. That was a busy time because I was invited to be in that art show, and we had to do all kinds of work on our art projects that got accepted. And so school was really intense, and just working the campaign in general was fairly intense. And then adding on top of that I was actually working a comic book at the same time. Issue 2 was a bear. So the fact that issue 3 is a lot longer isn't really affecting me as much as that time crunch and that pressure to deliver on time was for issue 2. I purposefully haven't started the campaign or anything for issue 3 yet because I want this to just I want to go back to what I did for issue number 1, which was I want to have this issue 3, completely printed and ready to ship before I launch the campaign, so that on day 1, issues 1, 2, and 3 are ready to ship. And I want to blow this campaign out of the water. I want to really work it. Do a bunch of campaign videos. We did a few campaign videos for the first campaign, but they were my ability to really focus on them and concentrate on them was minimal because of my obligations with school and my obligations to finishing issue 2 of the comic. So I think that the promo videos turned out good. They're funny. They're in that same. They have that same energy level and funness as the hack movies do. I think that old hack movies magic was present in those promo videos, but I can do much bigger, much crazier promo videos if I can focus just on the campaign, which is what I'm going to try to do.
Hola, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me, brother?
Yeah.
My co-host Skinny's all up in the chat, but I can't hear him. He's in the stream, but I can't hear him. I wonder if he can hear me.
I can hear you. And I see the volume
usually
bar.
what that means is I have to throw myself out of the chat. Okay, he can hear me, but I can't hear him. So I'm going to throw myself out of the chat and then put myself back in the chat, and I should be able to hear him at that point. So bear with me for just a second. I'm going to throw myself out and come back. Can you hear me, brother?
Yeah.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Woo. Awesome.
Let me throw
we had a similar issue with Lorenzo on one of my streams not too long ago. And it's like they were treating him like Rosa Parks and kept making him get to the back of the bus every time that somebody joined.
Really?
Yeah, it was really weird. Every time somebody joined, he could not hear them. So he would constantly have to jump out and jump back in because, Sleeve Stacks don't have rights.
I noticed that happens to people sometimes on the Doug show too. Once he gets a whole bunch of people in there, they will often some of the people can hear, some of the people can't.
Yeah, well, Google's supposed to be dropping Hangouts.
Well, that's
year too.
That's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. I started a stream earlier today. They always yell at me, use youtube.com/webcam. And so I tried that this morning, and I couldn't find an option to screen share.
Huh.
And that's sort of what I do on this show is I screen share my Clip Studio and let you guys watch me work on my comic. And so so I don't know what we're supposed to do. I guess we're supposed to switch to OBS and run through their live streaming stuff that way. Is that how they're expecting us to do this stuff?
I'm pretty sure they're going to come out with something else to replace Hangouts. I mean, it's not like Google just to jump ship without, providing an alternative of some sort. So, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens because there's really no telling.
Yeah, well, it's going to affect a lot of people. I mean, there are tons of people that do these streams through Hangouts, and it's just such a convenient software. I think it's one of the best things Google's ever created, and now they're going to throw it away.
Yeah. Like I said, I think it's because they have something better down the line.
Let's hope so.
Uh-oh. We lost a taco.
No, we didn't lose a taco.
I thought I heard him.
Sorry, I got the kittens on my bed right now, and my wife's like, "Oh, we lost one. They fell off."
I think that we were going to have you guest host yesterday, and then stuff happened on your end, and we weren't able to make that happen. But I had been thinking about what we could talk about on the show, and then I ended up in this huge war campaign drama on Twitter yesterday.
Oh God, yeah. I swear, it's like a black hole of sewage.
So, do you want to talk about that? Do you want to talk about the drama of Comicsgate this week? Because we could for sure do 45 minutes on that easy. But I don't know how much of that stuff you like to talk about publicly.
I mean, I try to keep it off the Needle Mover Society channel just because I don't want to be too divisive with people. But I do have opinions on it.
Well, at this point, though, what's left of Comicsgate other than Ethan and the war campaign, and then the people that are too financially attached to Ethan to let go yet? I mean, who are we even Who are we even hurting by talking about this? I don't think that 90% of the people that started in that movement are even there anymore. Am I wrong on that?
No, you're 100% right on that. But no, I don't go without talking on it on my channel to avoid hurting people. I really don't give two shits. Can I cuss on here?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We can say whatever we want.
I probably should have asked that first. But no,
okay.
I don't give two shits about that. Like, if I call out somebody's bullshit, and well, it's kind of their fault for doing the bullshit. But no, it's more for me is I wanted to have a place where people could escape the drama. Because there are so many channels where they're sitting here pointing out SJW this and SJW that. And
yeah.
And that's all they do.
Yeah, there's a lot. I've actually started to step back my consumption of even politically divisive stuff. I'm very open about my conservative beliefs, but I've noticed that I fell down this sort of tunnel of people that I don't even these social commentators on YouTube and Twitter that I'm not even sure a lot of them even hold the same beliefs I hold. They simply cater to topics that I am attracted to in order to get my views, my likes, maybe my subscriptions on Patreon, and super chats and things like that. And this goes for comics as well as politics. I've noticed, like, I'm not sure that these people are as sincere as they claim to be. And I've really stepped back my consumption of like outrage videos and stuff like that. What I call grievance merchants. It's just airing these grievances about video game, like, oh, look what they did to video games today, gang. I'm not even sure the people that are doing those videos play video games. They just know they can grab a gamer audience of people that are upset, and then they just sort of fan those flames, make us even more upset, and then start over the next day.
Yeah,
it's like this isn't getting us this isn't getting us anywhere. This isn't a dialogue to affect positive change. This is just, it's no different than the nightly news. Yeah, it's just trying to make me mad every day.
And there are some people who do the kind of outrage culture videos that actually do contribute a lot. Jim Sterling comes to mind because, like, he works with Steam with their greenlit program to make sure that quality games are actually being put out there. But he's one of these outrage guys, but he does it in a humorous way.
Well, I also like Jeremy the Quartering. I think that he does a lot of exposés, and he's doing a lot of investigative journalism. He does it in a way, it's very sensational, but he calls out a lot of gaming companies that have unfair practices within their the culture of the business, and as well as just calling out just dumb shit that happens on the internet associated with gaming and geek culture in general. He is an outrage merchant for sure, but I think that his stuff is more investigative than it is just, did you see what the, because there's so many channels that literally just pop up a news article
Yeah.
and do half an hour on a news article and then make money off YouTube advertising because they said an article out loud. That's not helping.
No.
That's not helping.
And you also got the guys, especially within Comicsgate, who stir up their own drama. They get called out on it, and then they pretend like they're the victim and they're being attacked. And that's unnecessary. It's like some of these people, they were going after Infamous for a while, and then she would fight back with them, and I'm like, well, why'd you poke the bear, man? Like, you didn't have to do that.
I don't like that girl at all. But I started noticing that when a Comicsgate creator would get ready to launch a campaign, they would start fighting with her and blow up these huge Twitter threads and get their name out there into the sort of comic stratosphere by fighting with this girl. And I just started going, you know what? I'm not even sure she's not in with these. It started to get this conspiracy in my head. Is she working with, like, is this a work? Is this an inside job? Is she friends with these people behind the scenes, and they all use this to create drama clicks for their YouTube videos and super chats, and then eventually, hopefully for them, sales for their indie comics on Indiegogo? Now, I don't know that that's true. I mean, she could just take the bait. She could just be really bad at taking people's bait and getting caught up in drama. But I got to a point where I was like, hey, man, it's been like 5 months of you complaining about this woman. Block her. Block her.
That's what Richard C. Meyer, I had an interaction with her last year. And Richard C. Meyer, Diversity in Comics, your boy Zach, whatever he's calling himself now.
Lots of titles. Lots of titles.
He reached out to me. He's like, we're trying to ignore this girl and just, kill her by ignoring her. Well, not actually kill, but,
Right. Just starve her out for attention.
And so I did. I was like, okay, cool beans, man. I went ahead and I blocked her. And then, certain other individuals. Not sure if I can name who or not.
I don't care. You can say whatever you want to. It doesn't matter.
Okay, well, EBS, the cyber turd, decided that he was going to go for 3 months and just make her famous.
Yeah, he did. He blew her way up.
Yeah, she's definitely not in on it. But she does benefit from it because ever since then, I mean, she's in her own book now. She's written writing a story for an anthology in a book, and a music themed anthology comic book called Deadbeats. Yeah. I think even Max Visaggio is in that book, which I don't have a problem with either of those people. I mean, yeah, their politics suck, but I know plenty of people I don't like their politics.
Right.
All I know is that these people, even though Comicsgate is like, oh, they're the boogeyman, they've left me alone. They haven't.
Yeah, no, the only people.
Anything. I don't talk about them. They don't talk about me. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, I've never held back any of my opinions, no matter how much it gets me dragged on Twitter when talking about comic books, indie comics, and Comicsgate. And the only people that have ever, I'm going to use the word loosely, harassment. It's not harassment, but when you get dogpiled by 20 different sock accounts from the same 6 guys, and they don't let up for days and days and days on end, you could pretty much say it's like internet harassment. That's not the same as like real life harassment. I'm certainly not a victim of anything. I just mute the conversation and never go back and look at it. But the only people that have ever done that to me is War Campaign. The actual SJWs in comics, they don't fuck with me at all. They leave me, and I've ended up on their threads and criticizing them for their stupid, hot takes on comic culture or masculinity this or toxic that, and they might comment back, but they don't send the wolves after me to stalk my page and screenshot me, criticize me, attack the amount of money I made on my campaign. This is all from yesterday. This is all what War Campaign was doing yesterday, attacking me personally, attacking my art style, attacking the amount of money I made on my campaign, calling me every name you can think of. And this is supposed to be a group that claims that they are innocent in this type of behavior. But if you show up on a thread and criticize Ethan Van Sciver or the War Campaign at all, you can expect days and days and days of insults flying your way. And again, I'm a big boy. That stuff doesn't bother me in an emotional sense, but it makes me. I just look at it and go, how can you guys even pretend you're not the problem when anyone with even the lightest bit of criticism of your behavior turns into this?
Oh yeah. Well, that's because they're just shitty people, man. They're actually
awful
SJW.
people.
I would even say they're worse than SJWs because at least the SJWs leave me alone.
Well, I had a lot of really bad interactions with SJWs, with the liberal extremists in the fiction world before I came into indie comics, and so I'm sensitive to why people built this wall and said there's crazy liberals on the other side of that wall, but I don't even know that the War Campaign aren't that kind of people. They act exactly like that.
Oh yeah,
and I think that they have created these personas around Ethan Van Sciver. He claims to be conservative. He's like a Mormon or whatever, and he claims to be conservative. I'm not convinced that these War Campaign personas aren't pretending to be sort of on the conservative side only because he pretends to be sort of on the conservative side. I'm not sure that they aren't just straight up full-blown SJWs like any of the others.
Well, if they were on the conservative side, for one, they'd be about free speech. Liberals are usually the ones who want to censor people. They want to get rid of hate speech and all this other shenanigans. Where War Campaign, wrong think, guilt by association, all trademarks of the extreme left.
Purity testing, all that stuff. They're constantly purity testing me. The slightest criticism of Ethan or War Campaign or any of the sensitive topics that they get triggered by, immediately they want to know how many campaigns I've backed, what my contributions to indie comics, how long have I been a part of the scene, all these different purity tests before my opinion can be validated at all. But let's take a step back for those watching that have no idea what the fuck we're talking about. This is real inside baseball, real indie comics stuff that is pretty foreign to most people. There are a series of creators that sort of were the building blocks of this movement of mostly conservative indie comics creators. All really got the ball really rolling last year, launching all these campaigns, really spearheaded by the guy you mentioned earlier, Richard C. Meyer, and his comic book Jawbreakers. And he really kind of set the tone. Now, John Delarose he coined the term Comicsgate in response to SJW extreme leftists sort of taking over the reins of Marvel Comics and all of the shenanigans that were going on behind the scenes there, the Milkshake Brigade and the Ask Me About My Feminist Agenda, all these different. You can look these things up on Google to sort of see what the real genesis of Comicsgate was. But and Vox Day and John Delarose, they launched a comic book on Kickstarter called Alt Hero, and I believe that was the first official Comicsgate comic. Am I right about that?
Possibly. I'm not entirely sure because I know that they also, I know Vox, they also published a guy by the name of Brandon Fiadino. He did this amazing book called Chicago Typewriter, and he got published. He was nominated for Best Graphic Novel of the Year for, I think it was Dragon Con or something like that. But Comicsgate completely ignored him, even though he was one of the first guys to actually get his book out there.
Well, that was sort of one of the first real big fractures, wasn't it? When the sort of Ethan side cut off Vox and John and sort of said, you're not allowed to sit at our table because we don't like that you said things that are a little too to the right to be mass marketed.
Yeah.
And the extent to which Richard C. Meyer is a part of all this stuff behind the scenes, I don't know. I personally have never interacted with him, but I really like his content on YouTube. I think that especially the video from last week, he does these. What is the company called that puts out the Comic-Con? The company that puts out the sales figures for comic books. Is it Comic-Con? He does these real interesting breakdowns of the sales to comic book shops of comic books, all the way from Marvel down to the indies. And he's sort of been creating this narrative over the last year, sort of showing how the more politically decisive a company and their comic books get, the fewer sales they actually get. And then he's also exposed a lot of the like weird type of shuffling the decks that these companies try to do in order to boost the sales numbers artificially, like over shipping comics to the comic book shops, which is hurting the comic shops. So Richard is like building this narrative of comic shops are going out of business at an alarming rate as the sales of comic books continue to drop, and the big comic book companies continue to do these sort of cook their financial books in a way that sort of tries to make it look like they're prospering, and in reality they're taking the entire comic book movement. And I think that regardless of whether Richard is part of this sort of behind the scenes whisper network in the Comicsgate scene that is hurting creators there, he is producing quality sort of investigative journalism content on YouTube. So I respect him in that regard.
Yeah, Richard was he's the one who got me back into comics pretty much. In 2016, my dad had passed away of pancreatic cancer, and I, for whatever reason, I saw one of Richard's videos on my suggested feed, and I started watching it. And then I was thinking, I was like, and at that time, I was just in a really bad spot.
Yeah.
And my dad and I had bonded over comic books and stuff when I was younger. So that actually motivated me to actually get into buying books again. So I got nothing but love for Richard. As far as whether or not he's in on the bullshit, I think Richard's just an idiot. I think he's a good guy. I think his intentions are good, but I think he's kind of a moron, to be completely honest. And yeah, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I mean, it's either he's a moron or he's complacent with what's going on. And I'd rather believe he's just an idiot.
Well, so this newest thing, this thing that I sort of got caught up in this week is Nasser. How do you pronounce his last name? Is it Rabbi?
Rabidine?
Rabidine?
I'm not entirely sure.
Well, Nasser. We'll just call him Nasser. Nasser, who is responsible for quite a few comic book scripts that have been adapted or are being adapted into comic books. He's sort of I think he's probably written more Comicsgate comics than anybody, hasn't he?
I wouldn't say that because, John Delarose, he's got a few books out already. But yeah, Nasser, I'm not taking anything away from him at all. But Nasser's awesome. Like, I remember before he even got in the inner circle, he was telling us about this book that he's doing on the Diversity in Comics Facebook fan page. And we all encouraged him. We're like, super chat Ethan. You got to get your stuff out there. You got to make sure people are aware. And we pushed him to do it. And I'm so happy he's prospering as well as he has, because he's a really good guy. Like, honest to God, he's a very respectful creator. He didn't start off that way. In the beginning, he liked to snipe at SJWs, and there were a couple of instances where I guess he was kind of punching down on a couple of indie creators, which I told him myself. I was like, I'm not happy with this, man. You don't need to be you're better than this. But he's grown up a lot since then too, and I only respect him more and more with the actions that he's taken. He's just a really good guy, huh? And he just cares about comic books, and that's what the thing is a lot of these guys don't even care about comic books.
Seems that way. So
They don't.
something happened this week, and he sort of finally publicly said, "You know what? This Comicscape thing is a dumpster fire." In not so many words. I'm not quoting him. I'm paraphrasing. Do you know what that catalyst was? Because I
Um,
don't. I really do my best to focus on my comic book and stay out of that drama. But every once in a while, it pops up, and I react and I say my, give my thoughts and feelings on it, and which is what this is leading to. But I don't know what the context of that was.
this is just speculation, but I think that it may have been the whole. Are you familiar with the incident with Mike Miller and Ethan Van Sciver?
Yeah, so I call that Comics Gate, Gay. I call it Comics Gate because Mike Miller, who is a very talented creator, who wears his religion on his sleeve probably harder than anybody else in Comicsgate. He's very, very, very religious, a Christian, and it's Gay Pride Month, much to people's chagrin, because it's sort of been the entire gay community has been sort of taken over by corporations who are really just exploiting this gay community by trying to sell them products with their logos on them, as though
Yeah.
that's somehow helping marginalized cultures and communities. Anyway, so June is Gay Month and Pride Month, excuse me. And Mike Miller, being a very hardcore Christian, very lightly, very lightly criticized Pride Month
Well,
by
he
hashtag.
if you look at it, he didn't even necessarily criticize Pride Month. He just did that tweet that pride is a sin, which it is in the Bible. It is. That's
It
all he
can be
said was
yes, it's a
he said,
double entendre. It can be taken as, and he did hashtag pride, which pops up a bunch of gay flags on Twitter, because Twitter's as woke as any of these companies. So he did hashtag pride is a sin. That's the tweet. That's the
yeah,
whole thing. That is the most light little flicking of that community you can even imagine. And like you said, it's a double entendre. He could very easily be like, I'm not even talking about being gay. You're the one associating pride with gayness, however that ever came about. But for whatever reason, Ethan blew the fuck up and went crazy on Mike for this little poke at the gay. I mean, little tiny
well,
poke at the
I
gay
can tell you
community.
without a doubt. I know why Ethan did it, and he's scared shitless.
Tell me.
He's scared of losing all of his super chats because he makes a shit ton of money off of it. And you got the Carlos Mazza and the Steven Crowder the adpocalypse going on right now, where channels are getting torn down for hate speech and stuff like that, and even SJW channels are getting taken down because they're not taking the video in its own context.
So you think that Mike's association with Ethan, and as much as they cross each other's streams and
Well,
everything
all
on
right.
YouTube,
Well,
that
yeah. Let's take a trip down memory lane. Were you aware of what happened with Nurkish?
only vaguely.
Well,
Oh
he
yeah,
had
yeah, yeah. It was like
yeah.
he had a Discord server, and there were things on the Discord server that Ethan didn't like, and basically threw Nurkish completely out of Comicsgate, because Nurkish was like, "Dude, fuck you. I'm not gonna do anything with that. That's not, I didn't even post it."
Yeah, and he didn't even have control of the Discord at that point. He had already gave it to somebody else and just said, "Okay, just let it go." But Narkish is a free speech absolutist, which I 100% agree with. I think we should be able to
Me
tell
too.
dark jokes and dirty jokes. I mean, you can call it
Absolutely.
anti-Semitic, but I've made Jew jokes before. I mean, it's called gallows humor. There's
The
people.
most inclusive a culture can be is a culture that can make fun of each other.
Yeah, exactly. And anytime I've told Holocaust jokes, it doesn't mean that I agree with it. It's a terrible thing. I mean, it really breaks my heart. I've researched a lot into it. My grandfather fought the fucking Nazis, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, my
Um,
grandfather was in World War II as well.
But Gallows, people react to tragedy in two different ways. They either cry about it or they laugh about it. I'd rather laugh about it because the only alternative is to be incredibly depressed and probably want to blow my brains out.
For sure. No, I agree with you totally. And so what we have here is like a series of incidents by the guy who has raised the most amount of money in Comicsgate, who honestly, and this is kind of what I was into it with War Campaign about yesterday. Um, Ethan Van Sciver did not create Comicsgate. He was not part of the original movement of Comicsgate. He was a comic book pro, made very, very, very good money at DC Comics, and decided to jump out of DC, go on his own, and start raising money to do his own comics through Indiegogo, and somehow that's turned into anybody who does anything that threatens his income has to be completely blown out of indie comics.
Yeah,
and he uses the War Campaign sock accounts to do that, to do his dirty work. And when I get into it with these guys, I'm like, who the fuck is this dude? I don't care that he makes $1 million selling indie comics. He doesn't need any of us. You say we need him, he doesn't need us. Fuck him. They talk about, oh, he's great. He's helped. I got into it with Cecil, who's a funny dude who shows up on the streams. He's not really a creator. Maybe he's going to write some comics, and that's cool if he does, and more power to him. But he was criticizing Nasser for leaving this week for whatever reason. Nasser chose to leave, and you said it had to do with the Mike Miller. But Doug TenNapel also
something else. I'm not aware of.
Yeah, Doug TenNapel also disassociated with Comicsgate over the Mike Miller Ethan thing. But the fact
with the TenNapel thing, I do have to add, he hasn't been Comicsgate for a while. He just didn't publicly announce it. Because he didn't want to hurt people like Ethan. But then when shit hit the fan and, Mike got thrown under the bus for a very innocent tweet. I mean, for fuck's sake, the guy's Christian.
Exactly. It's just the most softball tweet imaginable. And the whole thing with Doug, too, the War Campaign went after him and started to mass refund. What they'll do is they'll trigger mass refunds. They'll get a whole group of them. What they do is, and I have customers like this also that will hold, now I'm not customers in comics. I want to make that clear. My backers on Indiegogo have been great. I haven't had any refunds. What I mean is, like, in life, in day jobs, I've had the type of customers who will overpay for control. They feel like they can control you if they overpay. And if you step out of line from the way they want you to behave, they'll try to pull that money back. It's an emotional, what do you call it? Manipulation, whatever, and financial manipulation. And what the War Campaign will do, I don't know who these fucking guys are. I don't know where their money comes from, but they will overfund a comic book, and then they will trigger mass refunds and try to take all that money back if you are guilty of wrongthink. If you step out of line of what they consider to be politically correct in the sphere of Comicsgate, which, again, no one ever told Ethan he was in charge of Comicsgate. He started to create this culture of political correctness all on his own because he walked away from 6-7 figure jobs at DC, and now he's trying to make that all up on the indie scene, which, more power to him, bro. Go get your money, but you don't get to control the entire culture of indie comics in the process.
No, he doesn't, and that's the shit. The shittiest thing is that he doesn't even understand what CG is. I'm not going to name the person because I don't want them to catch any more flack because they have been attacked viciously over the past few months and by War Campaign. But this person actually was on a thread on Twitter, and they were talking about how Comicsgate, that they want to help comic shops. We don't want comic shops to close because we love comic shops. I do too. And talking about how it was a consumer movement and it was to keep the industry from dying. That was the entire point of it, was we wanted to save comics because with the SJW stuff, it was in a downward spiral. Eventually, Marvel's going to declare bankruptcy. or at least the comic side of Marvel. And Ethan popped in out of nowhere and drugged them through the mud. And of course, you know, me being me, I popped in and I told him to stop acting like he owned Comicsgate and being a virtuous ass.
Yeah.
And then I told him, I was like, you don't even understand Comicsgate. And then he went on to say that the person who was talking about saving comic shops was the one who didn't understand. And I even asked him, I said, why? And he literally said, well, I can't explain it to you right now, but they're just wrong. And I'm like, what kind of fucktastic shit is this? Like,
well, because he can't make a 7-figure salary from comic book shops.
Well, he also flips more than a pancake, dude. Like, I've literally seen this guy change his tune within minutes. Like, he will contradict. He's the living contradiction. Like,
sure, he's a
physical embodiment of hypocrisy, and I've seen it happen so many times.
I call him the Mark Waid of Comicsgate because he's clearly emotionally unstable and willing to drag anybody for any reason if it interferes with his finances. And the guy has kids, and he has a lifestyle that he's created over the last 20 years that requires a very large income. But it's not our fault that the guy walked away from a huge contract with DC. And I believe that almost all of the problems in this indie comic revolution that was started again by Vox Day and John Delaraz, all of the problems, like this thing would be going just fine. And no, there wouldn't be as much money involved. You know, Cecil yesterday got it when I got into it with him. He was criticizing Nasser, and I jumped in going, it's not fucking Nasser's fault that Comicsgate's on fire. It's the fucking war campaign and Ethan. And Cecil being the Ethan defender, he said Nasser would have never raised that money without Ethan. And I said, so you're saying that Ethan, you know, you're saying that Ethan is comics. You're saying that the entire fucking Comicsgate relies on Ethan. That's what everyone's accusing him of. That the only, you know, that he's the Lord and Savior of comics, and that's not true. And maybe none of us would be making as much money as we're making now without being on that guy's show because he has such a big following on there. But we would have found another way, and we would be surviving and adapting because I don't need a fucking 7-figure income. I'm not a big dick fucking DC Comics illustrator. I don't give a fuck about his money. And I don't need to be on his show to sell my comic. I do just fine at the level I'm at.
Yeah, well, lots of people have been funded without his help.
Yeah, it's not like crowdfunding started with fucking...
Yeah, crowdfunding comics isn't a new thing.
Right.
Just ask Brian Pulido with Lady Death. He's been doing it for years.
For years and years and years.
It's nothing.
And Doug's at $300,000 being completely dragged by Ethan's fucking shock troops. He still managed to pull $300,000 for Earthworm Jim. So it's not like the money's not there. It's not Ethan money, but fuck him. He's a comic pro anyway. If Donnie Cates decided right now that he was going to do his own property and he was going to write some brand new character and go to Indiegogo with it, based on the success that he's had at Marvel and his runs on Venom and Thanos, he would raise $1 million or $2 million if he went and did an Indiegogo campaign. Ethan's nothing fucking special. He's just a comic pro that went indie.
Yeah, and anybody who thinks that Ethan's like this human sunbeam, super nice guy, I got a challenge for any of those people. Go to your comic shop and ask the people working at the comic shop. Ask them what their thoughts are on Ethan, because even my local LCS, when Ethan first came into Comicsgate, I was kind of excited because I was like, you know, we finally got a pro on our side. We got somebody who actually has some weight. He can make things happen. And my comic shop owner said, fuck that guy. He's an asshole. And every other comic shop owner I have talked to who's dealt with this guy at a con has all had the same sentiment. And these aren't SJWs. These are just normal guys who like comic books.
Because the fact of the matter is, being a very, very talented comic book artist doesn't make you a public figure. The wonders of YouTube and social media have allowed us to pull the curtain back and experience the entire process of the creation of comic books. And that's fucking awesome because it's never been available to us before. But a lot of the guys that are great illustrators got that way by being in a dark room by themselves for 20 years. And that doesn't do wonders for your social skills. And so it's not a surprise to me that you would say that, oh, that guy that like draws this amazing detailed stuff, he does these insane Batmans and Catwomans and Green Lanterns, he's also a fucking asshole. It's like, well, why wouldn't he be? He doesn't interact with human beings. He interacts with a pen and paper.
Well,
I
he's
wouldn't
also
expect
paying customers wait years for commissions too.
Yeah, I've seen those threads as well about that stuff. Now, I'm not defending him by saying all that. What I'm saying is that his attempt to become the face and leadership of a consumer movement that requires him to be a public persona on video, it ain't gonna work. That dude isn't that kind of a guy. And he's forcing it. If you go back and watch his YouTube videos from years ago, when he was like, yes, I'm going to show you. Do you think that we're going to draw in perspective today? And he was just a quiet, meek little comic illustrator, and that's fine. And now he's like created this braggadocious persona that's it's super forced, and I think it's caused all these problems because the dude doesn't know how to be loyal to loyal to fans, to fellow creators. He doesn't understand that type of camaraderie and brotherhood that comes from a big social group. He's not used to it.
No, he's not. And I know some people, if they're watching, they might think, oh, this skinny guy, man, he's anti-CG. I'm not. I'm OG CG. I was here before Ethan. And I still hold those same principles. I still hold the same values. It's just Ethan has turned into such a shit show that I had to distance myself from it because I'm like, I don't want that shit staying on my record.
Yeah, like 90% of the people who used to really be hardcore Comicsgate and love to back comics and create their own indie comics, they don't even use what's the point of even using the term anymore? All it's going to do is get War Campaign on your ass to purity test you and demand that you pledge allegiance to their bullshit. There's really no upside for indie creators to even brand themselves Comicsgate anymore. Which is what I was trying to tell Cecil yesterday, and he was like, "Comicsgate's growing." I was like, "Based on what metric is Comicsgate growing, dude? All the talented creators are leaving, and the ones that are left, the big ones that are left, are only there because they feel seemingly feel obligated to Ethan because of how much money he's helped them make. But that's like, when you sip the devil's milk, brother." They should have never taken that money to begin with. That was dirty money to start with. You were taking the money from a guy that doesn't understand that type of camaraderie. And now he's holding it over. And it's like a Mark Waid. It's like, Mike Miller, do you know how much money I made you? You'd better not talk about gay people that way.
And the funny thing is I guess it's ironic, but he ended up leaving DC because they told him that he was going to have to take down his social media because he was such a shitlord on Twitter.
Right. It is, and that's, you see how it changes when suddenly it's your dime. He was cashing paychecks for DC, not giving a fuck about what the fans thought of him because he had a steady paycheck coming in. Suddenly, when it's his own ass, now he wants to get even more PC than DC made him be. DC probably kept him on a long leash. They probably put up with a lot of shit. Ethan doesn't put up with any shit. Any bit of controversy that looks like, as you said, that might interfere with his YouTube channel and take away the hundreds of thousands of dollars a year he's pulling in on super chats. He goes fucking nuts trying to censor all that, trying to shut it down.
Yeah, and my wife and I used to be big EVS supporters too. If you go back, he did that video of "I am the leader of Comicsgate," where he had a bunch of different people record themselves saying, "I'm the leader of Comicsgate, and you can be too." My wife's in that video. She was excited as all hell when he asked for help and asked for people to submit a video of themselves saying that.
Yeah,
she was happier than a pig in shit, man. And she did it, and she got in the video, and now we both just can't stand the guy. We can't stand what CG has become. It's stupid, man.
Yep, and it's all over some bitch ass money.
Mm-hmm.
If we hadn't have all been tempted to, you know, because it's Ethan is only to blame in as much as we sort of all gave him the power that he wields today. We sort of all said, like you said, oh man, we've got a comic pro in the indie comics movement because comics were in such a terrible state. Comics are so like mainstream comics, they're so fucking sad and they're still fucked up. There's still only a couple of guys making really, really good comics for the top two comic companies. And Image is a dumpster fire in and of itself.
Yeah.
And it was so refreshing to see that these really talented guys were going to start breaking away from the mainstream and come to indie and really tell the stories that they felt like they wanted to tell, away from those sort of bonds and chains that were holding of the PC mainstream comics that were holding them back. And really so we sort of all kind of gave Ethan too much power. We sort of said, oh bro, you're awesome, you're the comic pro that came to save indie comics. And it all went to his head, man. All went to his fucking head.
Yeah, it did, man. And it's sad to say. Maybe he was a decent person beforehand. I find that hard to believe because people,
like you said, he probably wasn't.
But I don't know. But you can tell that it's turned into a cult as well. Even with your interaction with Cecil, where he said that whether Nasser claims he's Comicsgate anymore or not doesn't mean anything. To Cecil, he's still Comicsgate. They pulled the same shit with Doug TeNapel and a couple of other guys.
Yeah, it sounds like fucking it sounds like Scientology, where they want to make an example out of you for trying to leave.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, well, you left. Well, we still consider you comics. There's no leaving Comicsgate." I mean, I'm sitting here wondering, like, when Jim Jones is going to come around the corner talking about the mothership and handing out fucking Kool-Aid at this point.
Yeah, and the sad part is, man, is this happens sort of in any online community that gets too big. This kind of stuff happens. It becomes this cult of personality. It becomes this virtue signaling to the cult, to the personality cult. It becomes these purity spirals. Like I said, I dealt with all this in fiction before I came over to comics. But I was really naively, I was hoping that because this was a baseline conservative movement, that we wouldn't fall for the same type of traps that the liberal movements fall to, but unfortunately, it's just the same.
Was a bunch of people saying CG means something different to me. You cannot have that within a movement. Within any movement, if you don't want it to die, you have to sit down and write out what it actually stands for. Whether it's this, or this.
Yeah,
you can't have 10 people who have different opinions on what it is. That's how things fall apart. And that's what happened with Comicsgate.
Yes, sir.
At first they said it's different for everybody. Some people it was about move the needle. Other people it was about sticking it to the SJWs. Other people it was about just quality books. Some others they just liked the drama.
There was the grievance merchants.
Yeah. And those guys are especially terrible. I'd like to point out one of the biggest ones, the biggest turds, and that's Tug. Dude,
yeah. Super grievance merchant.
He still claims he's been doxxed, and to that I say it's fake because. And people ask me, they're like, "Well, how do you know it's fake?" I said, "Well, I don't know his name."
Nobody knows who he is, but he's been doxxed.
Look what happened to Richard C. Meyer. They ended up doxing him. His name was plastered all over the place.
Right.
And that's even where he got the fake name Zach from, because at first they thought his name was Zach for whatever reason. He just rolled with it.
Yeah. Yeah. They said they said that this guy looks like a Zach, and he said, "Oh, you got me. You got me."
Yeah. But his name would be plastered all over. It's not.
Yeah. I got into it a little bit with Edwin the other day. Edwin's a guy that I still have a little bit of respect for, because when the Mike Miller stuff went down, Edwin wears his religion on his sleeve also, and Edwin is maybe one of the biggest Ethan and War Campaign supporters. But when the Mike Miller and Doug TeNapel shit went down, Edwin, as much as he possibly could, was trying to be on their side without burning the bridges with Ethan and the war campaign. And I respected that to a degree. Now, again, Edwin is his own guy with his own problems. But anytime I've ever gone at Edwin, he's been respectful to me publicly in a way that like Cecil won't be. Cecil will just start calling me names and get the war campaign after me. Edwin, I've actually been able to criticize, and Edwin will throw word salads at me, of course. But when you read through the word salad, there's nothing. You can call it condescending, but it's not like personal attacks in the way that.
That shit changes behind the scenes. That's just his public image. I'm going to tell
sure
you
that's what I've heard as well. But what I wanted to say was I went at him the other day concerning the fuck is it we were talking about. I started putting Edwin over, and I forgot why I was even what the interaction. We're talking about Tug. He had posted something of like, look what the SJWs are doing to Tug now. And I went, Edwin, you guys got to knock this shit the fuck off. Who gives a fuck what they do to all Tug does is play the victim. He's like a fucking soccer player who gets, they graze his elbow and he flops himself on the fucking ground and goes into convulsions trying to get the yellow card.
Well, it's like that meme with the dude riding the bike and he sticks the stick in the
in his own spokes.
Yeah, and that's Tug, because when he falls, he's like, fucking SJWs, you did it to yourself, dude. Like, you're constantly shitting on these people. You're making videos about them. You're throwing out memes about Infamous. You don't think they're going to fight back? Like, you brought this on yourself. Stop acting like you're the damn victim. Like,
yeah, he's a grievance merchant of the worst order and a very dramatic victim. And I'm sorry, but wearing a mask to a convention is one of the stupidest things I've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
You can call me all the names in the book. These guys run me down all the time, and I don't like to hit back like that. I don't like to criticize people for their personal appearance or things of that nature. I try to talk about ideologies. This is what's going to help comics. This is what hurts comics. But fucking who gives a shit who you are, man? Who the fuck are you that you need to hide? What kind of importance do you have that you think you need to hide behind a fucking mask? Well, I have a child. Motherfucker, everybody has kids. Get the fuck over yourself.
Yeah. Oh, and then he acted like his child was being attacked, which I've seen no evidence of. I've asked him, I've asked other people repeatedly. I was like, well, where's the evidence of this? Because he kept saying something like Infamous called CPS on him and all this other shit. And the whole time I'm looking at Twitter, and Ren's like, I didn't do it. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I wish you'd stop. If you could.
Well, there's like this way that SJWs act where they say, I didn't do it. Doesn't mean that they didn't like instigate it. But I think what she meant was like, this never happened.
Yeah,
you're making this up.
Did happen. There's no evidence. Like, maybe I'm an asshole, but I'm not with the kick Vic guys. I don't do that. If you're going to accuse somebody of something, you better damn sure show me evidence of it, because innocent until proven guilty. And so far, all I see is a Chicken Little with an umbrella on its face telling me that the sky's falling.
Right, and for a guy that hides behind a mask, there's not a lot of credibility there. Anything you say when you hide behind a mask, the first question anybody asks is, what do you have to hide? What are you doing behind a fucking mask? Anyway.
Yeah, I don't trust people who do the anonymous. I can't speak right today. When they remain anonymous. To that degree. Like, the moment you decide to crowdfund a book, you should put your name on that book. I don't trust people who don't do that, because it comes out, I don't even know who to contact.
To a particular degree, like I follow this. I don't know. Do you know who Razor Fist is? Political commentator. I don't know what that guy's name is, but he doesn't hide behind a fucking mask and like pretend that his identity is like super top secret. He just doesn't say what his name is. I don't care about his name. The fact is, I can see him as a human being, whereas Tug is like purposefully like, I have top secret clearance. You can't
Well-
know who I am. You can't know who I am.
He's also
Dude,
trying
you're
to
not.
drag people like Doug Garrett through the mud because Doug liked the wrong tweet. Like, are you?
I saw all that happen too. Yeah,
That's why
nonsense.
if you notice, like a couple of us, like if you actually look at our Twitter profiles, you'll see like this little thing. It says, "Like tweets are not an endorsement."
Yeah,
That's why. It's because he shit himself. Like he was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, look at these people liking these tweets." I'm like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
right. All right, dude. Well, we've gone over an hour, and I thought that was fun. I wanted to do one of those. We don't usually talk about that stuff on this show. This show is me and Brad really focus on our comic books. But I thought it would be neat to. I've been doing shows solo all fucking week, man. I've got like 4.5 hours of just me talking to myself and the chat this week, and I really needed a co-host to bounce off of, and I figured you and me could go hard on Comicscape for an hour easy. So
Oh yeah.
I appreciate you jumping on and doing this with me, brother.
Oh, anytime, man. I'm sorry I got held up yesterday. I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah,
I was
shit
really looking
happens.
forward to it. I woke up that morning. I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm going to be streaming with Kevin today. And then I was like, shit.
Yeah, shit happens, and I think I've got a curse on this show. I think the war campaign may have done some voodoo on me. But it's funny because that makes fun content too. When you see me come on here like alone again, gang, that's it's like a whole storyline. This whole week's storyline has been consistent in that respect. But Brad is feeling better. He's supposed to be back on Monday. We hope. If he doesn't, that's fine. I'm not holding him to it. He needs to recover. He needs to take care of himself and his health. And Skinny, if you want to come back and do the show again, we would love to have you. You're a cool ass dude.
I'll try
And you helped me raise a bunch of money on the Dead Shit campaign. When I was finishing that campaign up, you had me on the Needle Mover Society, and I really appreciate that. We didn't really know each other, and you had no reason to put me over, but I reached out, and you said, sure, dude, indie comics. And that's a genuine thing, man.
Exactly.
That's a genuine thing.
Like, yeah, just to plug my channel, the Needle Mover Society, I'll stream with any indie creator. I don't care if your comic book is made up on notebook paper, drawn in fucking crayon. There are no gates. If you got a product you're trying to sell, reach out to me. I'll help you out. Like, I will try to get the word out. Now, the rest of it is up to you. I don't guarantee anybody. And I don't necessarily endorse everybody whom I have on that may be considered negative. But I just like giving people a chance. I saw all the shit that was going down with Ethan, where a lot of these smaller creators were like, hey, you need to share your limelight. Because at first, of course, Ethan was like, yeah, I'll have anybody on. If you have a Comicscape book, reach out to me and we'll get you on stream and we'll help you out. And then, of course, that changed. That's not going to change with me. I don't care how big we get at any point. Even if I have to pay somebody to help me stream to make room for all the indie creators. Anybody's got something you want to sell? Reach out to me. I'm at Matthew Veely on Twitter. I think my actual tag is the Notorious SKINNY. Just yeah, look for the Comicsgate adjacent guy.
Yeah, and I'll put all those links down in the show description when we finish up here. I'll throw your Twitter on there, and I'll throw your YouTube channel on there, and people can find you. And if they have a comic book, we'll try to get Brad on your show too once he launches. Brad's a cool ass dude, and you guys will have a lot of fun. He's a funny dude, and yeah.
Your streams with him. I really got a kick out of like when you guys were talking about Ninja Turtles and the action figures. I think that was last week.
Yeah, we had that dude. We had that dude on that. He's doing moldy old cider from Instagram's lowbrow hashtag. He's a cool dude. Yeah, and he's like molding his own action figures and shit. That's cool. I want to do that. I want to make some custom toys of my Hack Movies universe, and do do a campaign for those. That'll be fucking awesome.
That would be awesome. I'm actually looking into getting into 3D printing as well. I've got a couple of friends who've been doing it, and they're like, "Well, give it some time, and we'll print you a 3D printer."
Hell yeah.
And they're dead.
Hell yeah.
They're dead serious. There's like the only thing you'll have to buy is the metal components, like the motors and the gyros and shit. And it's like,
Sure,
but
yeah.
we'll hook you up with everything else. I'm like, hell yeah.
Fuck yeah, brother. All right, we're gonna get off here, and we'll do it all again on Monday, gang. 10 a.m. to 11. Look for all those links for Skinny in the description. Again, thank you, sir.
It's always a pleasure, man.
And remember to stay strange and stinky.